The name The Extraordinary Tourist, which I gave to myself as a way of sort of attracting attention to myself online, because I think sort of being known as the extraordinary tourist raises people's curiosity when they see it enough to want to find out more about perhaps who I am and why I'm called that. And plus, I think it's sort of more interesting and less common than my real name, David, which, don't get me wrong, I like my real name. It's a very strong name, but it's also a very common name. I've known so many Davids throughout my life. It's sort of nice to have a name that is completely unique to me, which I think the extraordinary tourist is. But the name comes from, appropriately, one of the characters that I created, obviously called the extraordinary tourist. And I created this character back in, I'd say 1995, 96. It was just I did a sketch of what he looked like on a scrap piece of paper, and basically it was a sort of guy in his sort of late 20s, early 30s, almost bald haircut, wore sort of circle glasses and travelled. It basically looked like a tourist travelling with sort of trench coat and khaki shorts and camera around his neck, and the idea was that he travelled around the place having sort of fantastic experiences out of the ordinary. His name was inspired by the book The Accidental Tourist. I'm not sure who the author of that book is, but it's been made into a film that stars William Hurt, Gina Davis and Kathleen Turner, I think, and it became an award-winning film. But at the time when I came up with the name The Extraordinary Tourist, I'd heard the title of this book, and that was all I knew about it, and I really liked that as a title, The Accidental Tourist. For me, that was sort of interesting and raised my curiosity to know more about how you'd become an accidental tourist. And I liked that title so much that I wanted to come up with my own version of it. And obviously I came up with the word extraordinary, which also has the same sort of interesting tone to it. It sounds like someone who does something interesting and perhaps gets into more unusual situations or is a more unusual character. But although I've done some notes about the character, I've never really fleshed it out. I tried at one point to do a story that I made up as I went along for an early version of my website, but it never really sort of got fleshed out, or I never really finished it. And then around about the same time, possibly about a year or so later, around 1995 was when I really started getting into the internet and sort of developing the online persona that people do. And I was looking for a nickname, and I had the character of the extraordinary tourist, and so I thought, why not adopt that for my own online nickname, and I did. And one of the forums that I used to visit, people were pretty much too lazy to type out that whole nickname when they were responding to my posts. So the done thing was simply to just type the initials, which in this case was TET. So I became known as Tet, and that's where sort of the title of my website, which is Tet, comes from, as it's much easier to remember and much easier to type. But I try and make sure people know that what Tet actually stands for. Just because I think it's an interesting name and perhaps creates a bit of interest in what I do.